So I would like to actually not go back into the description of the financial sectors in the region, because this has been very well covered by Mrs. Grisani. So I would like to pick up a point which she mentioned at the end, but you mentioned as well, which is the financing of SMEs. So I think that whilst we can see that the banking sectors in the regions are relatively large, since on average assets to GDP is in excess of 100%, which is more than we can observe in the BRICS, for instance. At the same time, we see that financial intermediation is relatively weak. So I think that this is the interesting point, and I think that I will focus here on the SME part of this, because as we have heard already before, the big problem in the region is high unemployment and low growth. And if we have high unemployment and we have relatively high population growth, so we will have new entrants into the labor markets in the region, there really needs to be sort of a jump-starting growth that comes from the private sector. Basically, we need young, innovative entrepreneurs to be able to realize their ideas. And in order to be able for them to do that, they need to have access to finance. And so I think that here there are several problems why intermediation is weak in the region. The one is investor protection. So we do see that the institutional framework is sometimes relatively weak. And to give you an example, we have in some cases the scope for movable goods to be served as collateral is very limited. And this is just one example amongst many why you can really see that this makes this the investor protection. Sorry, I got a bit lost now. In some cases we do lack investor protection in the countries, and that makes it difficult then for banks. Also, we have a problem with the information environment. So credit bureaus are usually there to mitigate the information asymmetries. And in the region, there is a lack of working credit bureaus. So they're both public registries and private credit bureaus, but the scope of them is limited. So it's difficult for lenders to screen potential borrowers. And so that is also something that hampers intermediation, and that is especially affecting SMEs actually, because if you think about the large corporate customers that the banking sector usually serves, it's much easier for there to gather information, and the banks usually have a long-standing relationships with these customers. And then there's less of a problem with information asymmetry, whilst when you talk about SMEs, the problem is much larger, and often the banks do not have already a relationship with them. And then there's also actually from the other side, from the SME side, there's obviously also a problem, because sometimes they do not know how to, in a way, properly apply for a loan, so it's difficult for them to put together the financial statements that they need. So there's also a scope to introduce some policies that will help on the client side, on the SME side, for them to know how to approach the banks, to have a more complete dossier, and then to increase the chances of obtaining a loan. And then also, in addition, I think in the banking sector often there is no dedicated business unit for SME lending. That very often happens, that it's, or at least it's not very well, how to say, like the credit risk procedures and so on are often exactly the same as when you have large corporate customers, and that obviously is a problem, because the approach should be different when you deal with small or medium firms than if one deals with large customers. And that also results in the fact that large loans to big corporates are much more profitable for banks, Because if the assessment procedures and if it's all the same, then obviously the cost of SME loans will be higher, and it will be less interesting for banks to access or to start developing in this direction. And maybe there one can come back to competition, which was mentioned already before. Maybe increased competition in those markets would also lead to banks developing in a way better units for SME lending, that this market segment would become more interesting, and that there would be that increased competition would also lead to an increase in SME lending. So I think to sum up on this point, I think that there are reforms needed in the countries in order to address these specific issues. And without SME lending, and also there's also the whole tranche of mesofinance, actually, which are the entrepreneurs that do not really qualify for normal SME lending coming from banks, and they're too large for microcredit institutions. So this is also another segment that is often maybe a bit forgotten about. So it's really the very small enterprises, and these financial needs need to be addressed as well. And maybe from there I could get a bit into talking to you what the EIB is doing, in the European Investment Bank is doing in this region, because we actually do have also initiatives that try to address exactly those issues. So on the one hand, we have our normal instrument of extending credit lines to banks in the region, which are then used to do on-lending to SMEs. And one of the large value added that we have here is that we provide relatively long-term financing, and that the hope there is, of course, that this is also passed on to the SME client, that they can have access to slightly longer financing. But we're also trying through slightly more innovative projects to address this issue of very small entrepreneurs, innovative, young, new enterprises. So we have, for instance, in Tunisia, we have a new project where we will extend a loan to a relatively small, so a second-tier bank in Tunisia. And at the same time, the EIB, this bank, and an association which is called the Réseau Entreprendre have signed a partnership agreement. This association, Réseau Entreprendre, is basically an organization which helps young or small firms, often in the startup phase, to obtain some time of financing, but also they provide coaching. So the idea here is to provide liquidity to the bank, and at the same time have them expand their business to these type of small firms that receive also coaching from this association, and through this and some other technical assistance that would help the bank to learn how to assess those clients. We hope that we can sort of expand this field for the bank, the specific bank in Tunisia at first, but then hopefully others will pick up on it as well, so that they learn that this can also be a profitable segment if it's approached in an efficient way. Otherwise, the EIB is also involved in microfinance, so we also provide financing to microfinance institutions. For instance, we have a loan which will soon come up to a Jordanian microfinance institution, which is also active in microinsurance, which is also an interesting topic. But I guess this is going beyond the scope of my intervention. So I think I didn't want to go back to all the regional aspects that Ms. Grisani has already covered, so I will stop my intervention here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.